Hi, and welcome to Design Thinking, Prototyping, and Modeling throughout every CTE pathway. My name is Dawn Fregosa, and today we're going to talk about maker mindset and the growth mindset, do some activities that are really fun in a hands on setting, and take a look at how every industry sector, not just traditional prototyping and modeling aligned sectors, can use these concepts of design thinking to really enhance the innovation in their pathways. Just to let y'all know, I've put the resources up that you're going to see today and activities that you'll see in the slide deck, as well as um, uh, that I talk about today and showcase. You can find that at this little mini website that I built for ACTE Vision. While you're there, make sure you enter the raffle. I'll be giving away some Amazon gift cards at the end of this conference, and really hope to engage with some of you after this conference to see if I can support your needs in your districts and sites. So, what is prototyping? Well, prototyping is just a fancy way of making a model that represents ideas of one or more individuals. This usually a prototype, usually has many iterations. Students can make uh, prototype after prototype, as we've seen throughout industry, always getting better with each prototype. What we're going to talk about is the very base of making models and prototypes through design thinking concepts and how we can apply them to some fun activities in career technical education courses. So, throughout this uh, workshop today, I'm going to ask you to perhaps open another browser and you'll hear my voice. But I would really love to see you try some of these items out as we go. I put a timer on some of these pages so we can explore as we discuss the different options. So, this is a quick design brainstorm. It doesn't really matter what program you're in. If you need to get a good bell ringer or something to get the kids thinking and talking and sharing, think of this as sort of a design Pictionary. So if you go to sharpen.design.stem or just sharpen.design, there is a design randomizer. I've given you a couple of the random activities that I got on my randomization, and I want to take 30 seconds. I'll review these. We'll say take 30 seconds. Why don't you give it a try at this URL? So one thing that came up when I that did the sharpen.design.stem was invent a safety focused way to grow food at school. To me, I would have my students use either graph paper or just great big 3M paper, and they would have to actually do some sketches and brainstorming with their peers assigned to a group and come up with some kind of a stick drawing there. Build a conveyor belt that is powered by water and try to finish in 3 hours. I've done this with everything from paper cups all the way to Legos, and from ages 2 all the way through community college. Building a conveyor belt, building water powered anything usually is pretty intriguing. And more hydroelectric power is being used to power as a sustainable energy source. So, being able to connect those two things and how they work together isn't bad for any industry. Again, you'll see a conveyor belt. Here's one that works with solar power. Some really awesome programs out there where you can do simulations and or you can actually build them like with Legos. And then, of course, we have something a little more artistic, but really what we're looking here is to see if students can write out steps. To do instructional writing and to do instructional presenting is a real talent. And it works in pretty much every industry. So go ahead and take a look at this sharpen.design.stem. 30-second timer. Play around with it, see what you get. You can pull down where it says STEM education, and you'll see just plain marketing and business design as well. There's also some, if you're in IT or any of our computer industries, you will see some stuff about user interface and user experience. So, when we talk about that kind of a basic example, we're talking about first, of course, the initial requirements. What do we ask of someone to create? Then they get together, they brainstorm, they design, and from there, hopefully, they're going to prototyping and then a customer evaluation. When we're in the classroom, a customer evaluation could be anything from an industry expert to someone online who's mentoring them, to their peers, or even younger students who might be interested in what they're building. As you can see, the process of prototyping and model making has some similarities to scientific method. However, there's a lot more availability for students to go back and review over and over, making updates based on customer evaluations. Once your customer is satisfied, then we go into the business model. You can actually go into testing and testing with target markets and target audiences. So when I think about what you need to really be able to facilitate spur of the moment making and challenges and being able to do hands-on, I put together a very basic list of classroom essentials that I think you can pretty much use throughout a year and be able to pull off all kinds of different unique design challenges, design thinking aligned to your industry sector. These are some of my favorites, and I'll just let you take a look at this. I put the full picture of the compact glue gun. There's a compact and a full size one. These Ryobis are amazing. And if you are in any of the industrial arts in CTE, or manufacturing, or just a crafter, having an 18-volt um, cordless screw gun, glue gun is really amazing when you're doing prototypes and making. When I talk about tape, I say all the tape. And another really important thing to use is cardboard. We have so much recycled cardboard that most schools have access to. You can do a lot of great things with cardboard tape and a few minor things from the craft store or from the dollar store. I am also a big fan of Legos at all ages. I recently did a corporate event, and my target market was 37 to 54. And they played with Lego as we had brick breaks when talking about increasing innovation in our professional teams. So you're never too old to play. Another thing I really enjoy working with is Model Magic Clay, although some people seem to think it's for much younger than the high school crowd. High schoolers really can do some amazing things with it. Right here, you see cell models, and these were taken from a biotechnology class during the pandemic where they had to make model magic cells and then cross section them and take pictures identifying the different parts. This is from a culinary project where students had to make a signature dish out of the model magic clay, take a picture of it. Donuts, of course, are below it. We have product innovation and manufacturing here with the shark. That is actually a phone holder. And then, of course, the mask, which was done in one of our industrial arts programs. And they had to create the mask. And all of these are using Model Magic. Pretty reasonably priced, easy to use, stores pretty well as long as you keep it sealed. Now, why would I bring up modeling? Mo- Modeling clay is still used even today when making life size models of prototypes prior to taking even automobiles to the assembly line. Another really great item, if you don't have access to full 3D printers or full um, industrial or shared CTE makerspace labs, are 3D doodlers. These are pretty amazing. Deployed quite a few during the pandemic, and many schools and districts ordered lots more filaments because they got these pens back and are able to reuse them over and over. And again, the great thing is it allows for some neat technology, um, and every student can have access, or a group of students. I do like toys, and I think toys are important, especially when doing maker space and making, because kids want to touch and feel. And we have a generation who really is more tech savvy than they are hands-on savvy in some ways. So here's a great activity that I've done, and I've just gotten together some really miscellaneous items, but some staples in this scenario are googly eyes. The little ones that come on cute little stuffed animals, 11 by 17 paper. I really like using 11 by 17 paper. It folds in half to be 8.5 by 11 if you're doing um, any kind of poster. They post really well. I would strongly encourage, if you don't have one in your classroom, getting a 11 by 17 paper printer makes your Google Slideshows even more dynamic and allows you to print out some really great student work. Yes, older students still like to use crayons or sharp colored pencil. Brass brads, those are those little bitty things that are paper holders, and you put them through the hole in a 3-hole punch paper. And then there's all kinds of battery operated rainbow LED lights. They range in any uh, price between 12 and 35 cents each. And I always kept a class set of those, 35 of them. Like I said, they were worth their weight in gold, and we could use them over and over and over when we wanted our innovations to light up. So these are the brass brads, and your challenge, as you saw on the last slide, is you have to make you've been given a huge billboard near your school. And the outdoor advertisers is also going to give you a solar panel and a rainbow LED light to use in your design. You also may have a part that moves on your billboard. You have to design a new billboard or logo for your CTE pathway. This is great if you're explaining to students what the pathway is about before you do deeper dives into industry and labor market information, just to make them understand a little bit more about your pathways. Again, you can use these brass brads or paper pull downs to make an item move or turn. Googly eyes, yep, we do have billboards in Times Square and other parts of the world where there are videos actually looking at the people who are looking at the billboards. This enables them to do some market research as well as get people on the big screen. Wi-Fi. Yep, some billboards do have Wi-Fi. This allows for us to have good data capture and data explanation. And in some cases, those Wi-Fi stars allow um, for free Wi-Fi while you're underneath of it, like in this first picture. Now, if I were working with students right now, or we were in a hands-on space where I could work with you as teachers, I'd always say those were the parameters. I just gave you the rules of this prototype. And those are your initial requirements. What I really like is being able to give initial requirements and seeing how students work inside the box. Sometimes I'll do measurements as initial requirements. Sometimes I'll do pages. Sometimes I'll do height or width or a specific material they have to use. If you've never seen the show Forged in Fire and you want to explain perimeters, this is a great show to show your students. And it's basically about blacksmithing, but in that Forged in Fire concept, the blacksmiths are given very, very specific length, width, height, and the material they're supposed to use. And that's kind of a great model if you wanted your students to build, create, or model something that is aligned to your industry sectors. So when you think about the scenario that I gave you, if I said, well, I get all those things for my billboard, and I was handed a little LED light, and I was handed a googly eyes, and I was handed the Wi-Fi star, and I was handed the brass brads, all of a sudden, I'm able to make a model or a prototype of what myself and my team think that CTE billboard could be. You'd be surprised at what those few little bitty manipulatives will do to encourage students to have a hands-on presentation. And again, I really like using timers because I find that if students overthink it, they get lost in the thinking and the trying to make it perfect rather than the ideation and trying to be unique and exciting. At the end or in the middle of the cycle of design thinking. We want to make sure we're always getting a customer evaluation. If you do PBL, this would also be your public display and or engagement with the public. And this is where in the design thinking model, students should have an opportunity to at least voice where they would change or what they would have changed in the next design, or if time permits, make a whole nother prototype. I really love using pocket technology like cell phones when I'm doing review and updating with students and with teachers, because for them to see where they've gone and see and take pictures of the process and the different iterations really helps bring home how much getting peer feedback as well as implementing peer feedback can lead to a satisfied customer and a more effective product. Prototyping and model making doesn't really need to stick with just CTE. It can be used across all content areas. In English, it's the revision method. In history, it could simply be a simulation. With in math, we always go back and we relook at how we did something or should, and are there any other strategies or processes. When we look at prototypes and model making for these, we also will often think of them as manipulatives, and that's okay. But create something or prototype something that implements or activates the learning, not just that teaches. My son was 4 when he decided he was going to be a robot ninja scientist. And he announced at his preschool. My name is Fregosa. When I grow up, I want to be a ninja scientist. He told everyone he wanted to be a ninja scientist. Now, I don't see this anywhere in the California user guide courses for CTE, but my son was pretty specific that he was going to be a ninja scientist. Now, my 4-year-old came to me and he said, "Mommy, I want to design a robot that I can sleep with." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me about what this robot should look like." Well, I would want it to be a bright color and I would want to ride in it if it was big. It would have to have wheels and spikes on its arms. And of course, it will need to transform. My 4-year-old was giving me the requirements for his prototype. From there, he drew a picture. Again, color, he had paper, he had pencil, and he drew the wheels and the spikes. And he would ride in the face. I don't know if you can see that all the way up here. He colored it red, although in the picture it does look a little bit pink. This was the design concept. From there, we found a company who could make the prototype. The company we used was called Budsies, budsies.com. I'll give you the domain name here in a few minutes. He got a call after we shipped his picture digitally to the Budsy technicians. They clarified the color, not that it was supposed to be pink, but red, and we clarified the materials. From there, he went into production. Unfortunately, we had to critique the first prototype after it had been built, and hence Zaptrina was formed. Yep, the first one came in pink. And after a call with the Budsy specialist, soon after, one in red, the real color of Zaptro, followed. And yes, Budsies.com is a place that you can have creatures made. I've used it a couple times with students who created their own children's books or had their own drawings, and even have gone so far as to have a Petsy made for my dad who had Alzheimer's, so it looked like the beagle he'd lost. Let's take about 15 seconds to take a look at Budsies.com and see if you could use it in your classroom. They even have a school fundraiser program. So, throughout history and in marketing and advertising, we know that products in every industry. There are always a few weird ones that we see. So I thought today I'd lighten the load and share with you a couple odd products. So the question is, real or not real? So as we go through this, if you want to go ahead and put real or not real in the chat as we go through, let's see how you do on this quiz. So the first product, this is a product that heats up as you use your hot water in the shower. And as it heats up, it gets full of hot air, causing the spikes to come out, encouraging you to take a shower that is less long, wasting less water. Real or not real? This is real. These are shower curtains, and yes, they really are. Um, they were a test market run. Um, yeah, that's what they were there for. Basically, if you don't want to get trapped, you got to get out before it does and take shorter showers. Of course, all of us have had the problem where we can't reach those Pringles without squishing them or dumping them out. Real or not real? The Pringles hook. Put it in the chat. It is real, although it was created in partnership with a college engineering course and kindergarten through fifth graders who designed solutions to problems they had. Because every dog needs a beak. Real or not real? It is real. These are muzzles of sorts, and the beak is long enough to keep any dog from biting someone without absolutely keeping them from being muzzled or having a bind around their mouth. And besides, doesn't everybody want a duckatiel or a Labrador piggy? I think so. I have beagles who could really use this. How about a baby tool belt? For that new dad who wants to look cool but still wants to take Junior on the job site. Real or not real? It is not real. We have seen tool bags for men with all the tools you'll need as a new dad in a tool belt. And we also have seen, yep, fanny pack seats, just so your toddler, as they get a little bit older, has a little bit more of a cushion to sit when you pick her up, and it eases up on your back a little bit. Sorry, dads, no tool belt, baby. A rock. A rock. Was a rock sold at Nordstrom's? It absolutely was. It is real. In 2017, Nordstrom's had a rock for sale for $85 for the large rock in a leather pouch. Only $65 for the small rock in a leather pouch. Here's the crazy thing, a rock in a leather pouch sold out. If you want to show students some media or let them do some exploring on their own, a couple things you can do. Quirky.com. There was a whole series of prototyping and designing ideas from beginning to scratch, ideation all the way through, using the design thinking method. I believe the only place you can find it now is on iTunes. Kickstarter has some great stories and some great ideations. Some of the Kickstarters will show from early inception all the way to current production. And of course, we have Indiegogo, which, if you hit this site, it shows how Indiegogo works and how it helps people who are launching ideas and prototypes um, into reality. Now, if you really need a good sub plan, how it's made is on the Science Channel. And this shows how production is created and often all the way from the design to the manufacturing. So don't just review your directions in your projects. And one thing I would say to you is if you have existing product projects that could use a refresh, consider using the design thinking method to revamp your projects. Instead of just talking about directions, give your students the parameters of the prototype. Show them Forged in Fire or maybe Tiny House Nation when they interview people and then they build them a tiny house. And probably one of the most famous uh, design thinking shows on the Food Network is Chopped. You're given secret ingredients, and from there, you have to design something that your customers or your judges will like. I got my certification in design thinking from the Stanford Design School. And if you hit this website or you just go to the dschool.stanford.edu, you're going to see other resources for teachers. Any of these can work in any industry sector. Again, think of it as team building, think of it as design. Pivot it to make sure they're building a chair for someone in your industry. Or perhaps you're building a chair for your clientele or a specific demographic. This is a great activity where students have to actually design chairs to meet their target market. Sorry about that. Simone is a student who used design thinking quite extensively. She was in an entrepreneurship pathway, and from her entrepreneurship pathway, during one of her design thinking challenges, she had to create a comic book. She was an avid artist and liked sketching and turned her art into not one, but two coloring books that she's been selling since she was a junior in high school, turning it into a full flown business. Her most recent book, Color Her Story Sisters of Sound, takes a look at minority women and their impact on music for our generation. Legos. Perhaps no greater gift to any classroom than Legos. Yes, high schoolers still want to play with Legos. Yes, they still hurt when you step on them. Yes, you find them on the floor for ages. But used correctly, Legos can be a great way to teach prototyping and modeling. Lego has a plethora of different activities, and as you can see, can be applied to all kinds of different creations and models. Here's another scenario. Lego has hired your team to create a new toy to represent your CTE pathway to celebrate the career, technical, education, industry sector Lego brand. This student, if you had enough Legos, you could put students in groups and have each student create a toy or new Lego product for a CTE industry sector. If you were in an exploratory CTE course, why not put these in a hat and have students pull out what kind of a Lego product they have to make based on the industry sector? Legos haven't changed since they were made. Did you know that the first Legos were made of wood? If you laid all the Lego bricks just sold in 2012 end to end, they'd go around the world 18 times. And Lego is the largest producer of rubber wheels. They're called tires in Lego speak, Tyres. Lego has currently begun making their Legos in sustainable plastic. When they discovered that for every person on this earth there were approximately 85 Legos in a landfill, Lego tried to do something about it. This included allowing vendors to resell their plastic bricks worldwide to keep them in circulation and to keep them being used by people who love them. In addition, all their plants beginning in 2018, are being made of sustainable sugarcane plastic. This is one step that Lego is making to not only decrease their footprint, but increase the ability for more and more people to play with abandoned Legos. When blueprinting, you can do everything from a create your own toy to working models that actually can move. We've seen people use Legos for art, create lights, and even make machinery using some of the higher end mechanical Legos. Lego is one of the few companies that doesn't mind if you make Lego compatible products. This is including the Lego tape, the Lego hat, and of course, light up Lego bricks. One of the more interesting Lego compatible products is called MeeperBots. This company came out of the need for a very, very simple remote control for younger students to be able to make moving vehicles without having to code. Its new interface also allows for basic block coding, or you can just use the remote control on any Android or iOS device and move your Lego creation all around the room. You can even change out the size of the tires, and it's all Lego compatible. One thing to think about if you're going to do any kind of Lego um, competitions in your classroom is to make sure you pivot not only on having a special brick, but also plenty of other Legos. I always bought used Legos, and a great place to find Legos is in your local neighborhood. Are you on the Nextdoor app for your classroom? Maybe ask for donations. You can run all Legos through a dishwasher to sterilize them. Two of my favorite blueprint to builds here are making wearables where a student would have ribbon or a cord, put it through the hole, and they and their team would have to design a wearable. In addition, I really love doing brick bots or battle brick bots with students and adults. This gets their creative juices flowing, and it's like spinning a top, and that simply takes this rounded brick. One of my super secret places is a company called, pardon me, a clearinghouse called brickowl.com. If you plan ahead, you can get all kinds of discontinued Lego parts from brickowl.com from all over the world. Take a look at the URL right now. Several years ago, I ran this same activity that we just talked about, and this is what my students came up with. They came up with a Lego bathtub kit because I told them you could sterilize Legos. They thought, well, what better place than in the bathtub for a kid to play with it? So, using teak, they adhesed a brick plate to the middle of a bathtub book tray, and they put two linen bags on each side and hinges so that it could be dried. They actually tested this with their little brothers and sisters, and everybody thought it was a great idea. This is the kind of innovation that can be taught by having hands on activities and perimeters using the design thinking method. People have actually created businesses out of designer Lego creations. The Mock Nation does custom Lego builds, and they're also part of the Brick Fest that goes around the US and in China and other European countries, taking some amazing Lego creations in a museum style show. If you really get into Lego in your class, no matter what your CTE industry, one thing to think about is ideas.lego.com. This is an online competition where Lego builders can submit their ideas and their builds to be turned into a Lego set. There are both youth and adult categories, and they run the contest year round. Legos have really, really grown in the Bay Area of California. One thing that we actually do see is these giant Legos known as Everblock systems being made into subdividers so big apartments can have one more extra roommate and a little bit of privacy. We've also seen them in office space settings where you're able to give yourself a little privacy but still be in the office. I brought some extra activities because when I used to go to conferences as a teacher, I always liked having something that I could use in the classroom the next day. One of my favorite ideation and design thinking activities surrounds shipping containers. Shipping containers are all over the world and they're used for, as we all know, transporting goods and services, usually via ship, via truck, or via sometimes via airplane, but most of the time, truck, ship, train. Um, these containers are often left to rot or rust in areas and often are sitting stagnant. Lots of entrepreneurs have begun using these as a way to create new things. This activity is called sustainable design, prototyping a CTE space. Using cardstock and the template that I provided in my resources, consider analyzing facts about containers. And again, doesn't matter what industry, this works for all industries. As we all know, for some of the shortages we've had for the last 6 months, being able to look at how cargo is transported is important for every industry. There aren't many industries that haven't been affected by supply chain concerns. In this scenario, students are given 9 empty a scenario, sorry. And they are going to make 9 empty 8 by 40 shipping containers. I've given you the aerial view of the container here, and you can front load things like what blueprint components you want them to have. For instance, if this is a culinary arts project, then that you would want them to turn it into a ghost kitchen or a restaurant. If it was an auto program, you might want to turn it into a repair shop or an auto lot. I always like to leave a place for my CTE teachers to put their own twist on things. This is where you would align it to your sector. And I would actually have students go out and do some shopping. What are some special features that you would want? What are some links to some costs that might be involved? And again, this full template is in the resources on the webpage that is on our link. Now, the students also have to take a look at the exterior. Now, remember, you get 8 feet wide by 40-foot long containers. Look at some of the things you can do, like stacking. There are some parameters here, no more than 3 stories. You have to show parking for at least 10 vehicles, and you have to add or should use sustainable energies. Here's a place where you can calculate shipping containers. Did you know that we're going mobile? Since the pandemic, many people decided to forsake their brick and mortar or their storefronts and go on a more mobile and transport their businesses to different local small communities. Here's an article about 25 easy ways to start a mobile business. I've also given you in the resources a printable food truck or just a printable truck. It could contain anything from a therapy space to do psychoanalysis on the road, or maybe it's a home gym in a truck, or even a farmer's market pop out. The opportunities are endless and should and could align with your CTE pathway. One of my other favorite things to work with students on modeling is cardboard. Cardboard can be turned into so many things three-dimensional. In addition, it's cheap, it's easy, and with some blue tape and a little bit of paint, you can do pretty much anything with it. Kane's Arcade was based on a really amazing 10-minute video. I put the link here. Kane was a young man who hung out with his dad at his dad's auto shop and always had plenty of extra cardboard. He turned his cardboard in and his imagination into a cardboard arcade. Kids all over the world have followed the organization that stemmed from this amazing young man, imagination.org, And you too can host your own cardboard challenge in your community. I like students competing, and if you are doing alternative forms of leadership as part of your Perkins funding um, documentation, then doing regional and national competitions is important to your pathway as well. Instructables is one of my favorite building and making contests. Often you can also find items that, if you are in an industry, might make things easier. We already talked about the Lego Lab. There's also ideaconnection.com, Innocentive, challenge.gov, James Dyson Award, and discoverdesign.org. There's many others out there, like the trade magazines for your own industry, might even have innovation fairs or hackathons. And often your local county fair or state fair will also have challenges they're asking students to show work on. If you can't get any great ideas, take a look at do it yourself YouTube for your industry sector. Want to have the kids invent something? Have them look out up how to make it and see if they can make it better. There's also looking at Pinterest fails and having them do it better in their invention. Makers Ed's got some great resources, and if you're looking on a way to tie it into local and global innovation and or community service, consider using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are 17 goals that are hoping to move humanity forward through innovation, and often students do really great work creating activities around that. Who knows, maybe one of your students will help solve one of our global problems. Another way to look at um, design thinking is to solve a problem. One problem that we've seen a lot more solutions for since 3D printing and digital manufacturing has become easier are ways to work around people and animals' disabilities. From um, from the minds of people who saw the effects that non-handy capable um, products had, you can see everything from the mug that doesn't tilt, especially with someone with Parkinson's. You have the Braille watch, prosthesis made of 3D printed material, a roll in car, and even a way for people in wheelchairs to get down to the ocean in a beach. Some closing thoughts on making and prototyping. Give the students more choice, work within parameters. This will help increase critical thinking and creative problem solving. And in this world where we need more social emotional interaction, will help with group work. Take an old stale heritage project, something you've done for a while, and tech them up with symbols of the trade or the time. Even consider using Tinkercad and going a step further and having them print 3D printed objects if you have access to 3D printers for their CTE industry. Remember, proper planning prevents poor performance. Look for your Legos or other materials when you see them and store them away. I once had 200 mailing tubes donated to my program, and we did a mailing tube innovation challenge. They got to take 3 home and had to turn it into a new product. The winning product was a charging tree. The tree was made of heavy duty fabric and 3 tubes, and they put an electrical plug strip in the bark of it, which was the mailing tube, and little pockets so people could hang their phones on it and charge in the charging tree. Timers, timers, timers. The creative process can go on forever and ever with lots of cycling through the design thinking process. If you don't put timers on it, they won't make it through the whole process. Making does not need to be high tech. Prototyping and modeling can be made of paper and of other easy to find materials and lots of tape. It's a process. It's messy. It will get messy. And it is a process. Students will learn to work with the materials that work best for them and they feel comfortable with. And in some cases, students have not had a lot of access to some of these materials. Some students will not know how to do art or to do making in that level. Help them or let them go on YouTube and find out how to do what they need to do. There's pretty much a tutorial for anything. Dollar store dives. I've found some of the coolest things at dollar stores, and you'd be surprised what they'll give you when stuff's on sale at a dollar store. Clay, cardboard, pool noodles, papers, material challenge, cardstock. Using sustainable materials all keep costs low. I want to thank you all for having me today. It's been a terrific presentation. I really appreciate you all and being here for me and for my presentation. I will put up the raffle and contact information, and I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer. If anybody has questions or comments about the presentation, don't forget to register for the gift card, and all my resources can be found at the link that you see on the screen. Have a terrific conference, everybody. Again, thanks for stopping by my workshop.